Georgia's got better football players across the board on paper. Is that going to matter, though?
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome into it. Your Locked On Vols episode here this morning, just a couple of days away, and it is Tennessee and Georgia from Neyland Stadium. College game day is going to be on campus. All eyes on the college football world is going to be pointed towards Knoxville. So I'm Eric Cain here, host of Locked On Vols. Man, these weeks are fun. These games are fun. These weeks are fun. I hope you guys are having a blast. And we have here on Locked On Vols. We'll continue tomorrow as well with Boogie Bentley. Today's show presented by our friends over at FanDuel Sportsbook, where football season is here on the FanDuel app today. You can start planning your future bets now for the entire season. We're going to have Throwback Thursday, chatting with Noah Taylor of Neyland Press Corps, coming up in segment number 3 on some past Tennessee-Georgia games. Chad Simmons of RIVALS.com of the On3 Network going to join us in segment 2 to break down a pretty big weekend of recruiting in terms of visits for the University of Tennessee. But right now, let's discuss Georgia. We talked Georgia all week long. We talked about who, what people are saying about this matchup and what the line is and all that, courtesy of FanDuel Sportsbook. We haven't really dove into who Georgia is. That's what we're going to do right now here on Locked On Vols. I'm your host, by the way, Eric Cain, host of Locked On Vols, a member of the VolQuest.com team here in town. Everydayers, thank you so much for being here. You guys know it. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. So who is Georgia? Well, Georgia is a football team that is 2-0. Georgia is a football team that took down Marshall 45-7 in the season opener and battled the storm, if you will, battled the weather, if you will, literally a 28-6 win over Austin Peay. It was just more of a weird day, right? It was moved kickoff time up, had a 2-hour delay. It was just kind of a funky day. But 45-7, 28-6, expected wins, big wins over teams you're supposed to have that happen. Meanwhile, Tennessee, of course, 45-26 over Syracuse and 72-17 over ETSU. This is a Georgia football team that, so far offensively, I don't really know yet. I don't know yet. It's early in the season. I know last year Georgia was not very good running the football, which was very, very weird. But so far in 2 games, again, against really bad opponents, Georgia is averaging 214 yards per game rushing. Georgia is averaging through the air 240 yards. That's solid. Georgia offensively is averaging 454 yards of total offense in those 2 games, averaging around 26 first downs a game and scoring at a 36.5 clip. Gunner Stockton, who I have big-time questions about because I just simply don't know. Again, I've mentioned this several times this week. Gunner Stockton making his first true road start ever in Neyland Stadium on Saturday. His first true SEC start in Neyland Stadium on Saturday. He's played in bowl games. He's played in the SEC championship game. He's played in the college football playoff, but he's never walking into a Lions den like he's about to walk into on Saturday at Neyland Stadium. Tennessee has got to make that a factor in this football game. Speaking with Jerry Garantano for a podcast that's coming out on game day over at VolQuest.com, and I said, am I making that too much of what it is, right? Am I overestimating that part of the game? He's like, no, I think you're underestimating that part of the game. Like that is everything for an opposing quarterback coming into a place like this that's never experienced that before. So Tennessee has got to get after Gunner Stockton, who pretty good athlete. He led Georgia in rushing in the opener, 10 carries for 73 yards. He has 2 rushing touchdowns on the year. Doesn't look like it, but a pretty deceptive runner. Through the air, he's 40 of 58, completing passes at 69% a clip, 417 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Hadn't really pushed the ball downfield yet, but I don't think there's ever been really a need. Running the football, I think Georgia's looked pretty good. Nate Frazier is kind of leading that backfield. Chauncey Bowens has stepped up in a big way. Dwight Phillips. You have Frazier that's got 116 yards. Phillips has got 115 yards, and Bowens that have 89 yards. Those 3 have combined for 5 touchdowns, whereas Gunner Stockton has the other 2 rushing touchdowns on the season for Georgia with 7 total. But what I really like, if I'm a Georgia fan, what I really like about this offense is the skill. I think they got a lot better at the skill this year. Colby Young is a more experienced player. Zachariah Branch coming over from Southern Cal in the slot. Will Tennessee choose to shadow him? We'll see. London Humphreys, his second year from Vanderbilt. Noah Thomas coming over from A&M. Dylan Bell's still there. And then you get to the tight ends and the Oscar Delps and the Lawson Luckies. I don't think Georgia has it all figured out offensively, but the personnel grouping is there if Gunner Stockton can hit his targets and be a good quarterback. What Tennessee's banking on is they're still trying to figure it out mode, just like Tennessee is a little bit as well. Can you take advantage early in the season with a defense that, sure, you're missing some experience in the back end, Jermon McCoy, Ricky Gibson. You're missing some depth at the interior defensive tackle, and right now, Jackson Moy, we'll see if he plays, but David Hobbs, where are you? Still, because of all those things, you still have a veteran group, an experienced group that I think can get after it and make things pretty difficult for Georgia that is also dealing with some injuries on the offensive line. But I like the skill, player group right now. Colby Young has 9 receptions, Zachariah Branch has 6, London Humphreys has 6, Cash Jones has 4, Cash Jones is also a running back, I believe, but they use him out of the backfield. Anyway, that's kind of a look at Georgia's offense right now that's been okay, but again, not really needed to be all that dynamic. The defense has been solid. They've given up 13 points in cupcake games against Marshall and Austin Peay, but they've been very bland defensively, and I think the defense is going to dial it up in a big way in a game like this. Linebackers rule the day for Georgia. Rylan Wilson, linebacker. C.J. Allen, linebacker. Chris Cole, a linebacker. They got a lot of really good linebackers. In the back end at safety, K.J. Bolden is a very, very good player. One of the other new safeties, new safety in Kyron Jones, taking the place of Malachi Starks, playing with a club on his hand. But, so far, we'll see if Tennessee can test him there in the middle of the field. At corner, I think they feel pretty good about corner. You've got Dalen Everett at one of the corners. You've got Harris. Is it Gabe Harris or is it another Harris? I don't have my notes in front of me. I got it right here. Daniel Harris is one of the corners. Dalen Everett is another corner. You also have Ellis Robinson, who's a corner. Those are the 3-man rotations at corner. Your star is an experienced guy that's played that position before. So, again, I think they've been pretty bland on paper, this defense for Kirby Smart, but I think they're going to dial it up. I think they're going to get after Tennessee, just like Tennessee's experience in this series the last couple of years. So can Tennessee's interior defensive line hold up versus the pressures and the blitzing that Georgia's linebackers are going to do? Can Tennessee's wide receivers beat press man coverage out on the perimeter and get downfield and allow an opportunity to have some of those shot plays or at least move the sticks? Those are some things that didn't happen last year. Those are some things that haven't happened in this series under Josh Heupel. Last year, 6 sacks given up to Nico Iamaleava. Tennessee only has, 2 or 3 pass plays that have exceeded 25 yards in 4 years in this matchup. Not a whole lot in that regard. Nico didn't throw for over 200 yards. Tennessee hasn't completed a touchdown pass against Georgia since 2021. Those are big deals, right? So can Tennessee buck those trends against this personnel grouping? We'll see. I like the personnel grouping in terms of what the talent level is, but will that matter in a game like this where you got home field advantage for Tennessee when you have a veteran defense, when you have a run game that's proven? Even in this series last year, Tennessee was able to run the football, and a quarterback that's feeling himself right now is playing a little bit of confidence if you're Tennessee and Joey Aguilar. I don't know. We'll see. We'll have official predictions coming up on tomorrow's show, but it's why this is so weird. This game is so early in the season. There's just so much we don't know about this matchup and these players right now. We're about to find out come Saturday. We'll continue talking Georgia, specifically Georgia, this iteration of the Georgia Bulldogs. Tomorrow's show with Boogie Bentley, I'll give you my keys, my predictions, keys to victory, all the game plan, all that and more on a Friday, locked on Vols. So don't go anywhere. Be sure to stay tuned. When we come back, we will talk with Chad Simmons of Rivals.com. He's going to break down a massive weekend in recruiting for Tennessee football. That's coming up next right here as we continue this Thursday Locked On Vols. It is almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered. Powered by DoorDash, just like you win every Saturday with DoorDash, streaks saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered the most. Let's break it down. For Tennessee, man, we've highlighted the wide receivers. We've highlighted Star Thomas. We highlight Deshaun Bishop. He just continues to do what he does. Explosive plays in the backfield. Had a 50-yard run on the first drive. Just like Deshaun Bishop is doing great. He came through, no hesitation, no delay. If you've been watching the week after week, look what he did against Syracuse. He had a phenomenal game there as well. This performance wasn't just a fluke, okay? It wasn't a fluke at all. Deshaun Bishop is on a streak. And just like Deshaun Bishop delivered for the Tennessee Volunteers, DoorDash delivers for your Saturdays with DoorDash Streaks. You save every Saturday with your order, stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday, keep the streak live, fuel your game day, and only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November the 18th. Pleased to welcome onto the show from Rivals.com, national recruiting analyst Chad Simmons. Chad, really appreciate you taking the time. Massive recruiting weekend coming up for Tennessee. Obviously, a big-time game on the slate as well, Tennessee and Georgia. But first, let's talk about the class overall. This 26 class for Tennessee, man, is starting to look really good, kind of rounding into form. It's solidified as a top 10 right now. Things can always change, but a lot of high-end talent with Tristan Keys flipping to join Faison Brandon. Of course, you got two of the better athletes in the class, with Joel Wyatt and Celeste Moa. Love the linebackers, Braden Rouse, TJ White, and of course, Hezekiah Harris and Kamari Blair, two recent flips as well. Just some of the headliners of this class. I feel like this has potential to be one of the best classes Josh Heupel and his staff have put together here on Tennessee.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, obviously the month of August and early September has been about flips. You know, Kamari Blair from South Carolina, in-state offensive tackle, and obviously the big one was Tristan Keys, 5-star from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, going from LSU to Tennessee. And, of course, recently Hezekiah Harris leaving the home state school, Auburn, going to Tennessee. And, you know, like you said, it's a great class, a lot of big wins. Obviously flips, you know, always are huge headlines and newsmakers. But, you know, going back a year plus, Faison Brandon, elite 5-star quarterback, and from North Carolina, you know, Tennessee beat schools like Alabama and LSU. I mean, I love a guy like Legend Bay. A&M was at one time trending for him in Texas, and plays quarterback, an elusive athlete that can do a lot of things with the ball in his hands. And, you know, a guy like Braden Rouse from my home state in Georgia. Texas came on strong. Georgia, the in-state school, was involved. Alabama in the mix. Michigan as well. Tennessee got it done in the end, and goes back to, I think, relationships and connections. Got that job done. Like you said, Eric, a great overall class, a top 10, I think, top 10 strong class for Heupel and company at Tennessee.
I'm going to throw you for a loop here. I did not tell you what I'm about to do, so bear with me here. Let's go back to the class of 25. And you kept mentioning relationships and how that's still obviously very relevant in recruiting nowadays. One of the earliest commits for Tennessee in last year's cycle was cornerback Ty Redmond. Not a very highly rated guy. Like, it's an impossible task to rate these players. I know that. You're obviously a part of that as well. But, like, you know, 70th, 80th in the country in Georgia, which is loaded with talent. But he had a really good fall camp coming on due to injuries, playing a massive role for Tennessee as a true freshman at corner. And it kind of goes back to those relationships and saying that, you know, this staff evaluates, you know, their scale, and they're going to take it. They're going to build and develop those guys. Ty Redmond in that conversation and some other ones. Who maybe are, you can speak on that if you would, but also in this 26 class, you know, Zayden Anderson kind of comes to mind. He's got a lot of speed from Greenville. You know, the Green Devils, really great program. You mentioned Legend Bay, who's a nice rated player. But there's a couple of those players in this class as well that this staff just really likes, got early commits from. And like Ty Redmond, maybe that turns into something here earlier in their careers.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, you know, just about, you know, one thing I like about the way Tennessee recruits is just kind of almost the old school way. It's not all about buying and NIL. Yes, that's part of it for most recruits nowadays. It's part of the process, but just kind of sticking to their guns and being, you know, all about communication, all about relationships, all about being consistent. You know, to me, that's helped them a lot in this 2026 class, whether it's being an early commitment like a Faison Brandon or a flip like Hezekiah Harris. I think it all goes back to the same roots, and that's communication, consistency, trust, relationships. But for me, talking about a guy like Redmond, I saw him last year, obviously from Georgia and doing what he does and a player. But a guy like, I think TJ White kind of went somewhat under the radar as a commit for Tennessee. Yes, he's a player and he comes from Mississippi, and there was talk about Mississippi State, you know, Florida State, different schools, and kind of quietly, you know, somewhat in this day and age committed to Tennessee. Not a lot of fanfare, you know, around his name or hype, but I love him as a player, how he competes, his leadership. at Jackson Academy, a top program in Mississippi. Those guys work. They complete every day in practice. And he's a guy I kind of feel like he doesn't get talked about a whole lot. That can be a guy like Redmond, maybe this time next year, making an early impact that people didn't talk about. Everybody talks about Keys and Brandon and those kind of guys being the 5 stars and the elite playmakers. But TJ White's a guy to me that comes to mind. And again, how it goes back to them getting him was that relationship with a guy like Josh Heupel. He committed to Josh Heupel while they were shooting basketball early on the official visit when that started on a Friday afternoon. So that comfortability, them knowing each other, played a huge role in that decision.
I want to look at 2027's class real quick, and a guy that's expected to be on campus this weekend. Man, one of the top running backs from the state of Tennessee, from Baylor. And you kind of think about it, man, and kind of laugh, but it's kind of true. Baylor's kind of turning into a little bit of a pipeline for Tennessee, right? With just, guys on the team right now, current commits in the class. David Gabriel Georges. Man, I think he looks like a guy that's SEC ready, and that's crazy to say about a high school athlete right now. But if you just turn on the tape and look at him, he fits the bill, literally. Ohio State very much involved in this one. Tennessee is as well. Still early in his recruitment, but where do you have Tennessee in this one for David Gabriel Georges?
Yeah, I mean, I think, depending on, again, kind of who you talk to or the sources that you have, I think Tennessee's 1 or 2. I think you mentioned Ohio State. He was there for the Texas game. He'll be back in Knoxville this weekend. He's been to both of those programs in Columbus and Knoxville around 3, 4, 5 times each. He knows the coaching staffs very well, knows some players on each team. And like you said, Tennessee will love nothing more for it to be a true pipeline down to Chattanooga at Baylor with a guy like this. Like you said, he looks the part. I could see him playing like right now, for a team like Ohio State, Tennessee, Georgia, Oregon. He has those physical traits, that ability, that kind of strength. And he's also very mature off the field for just being a junior in high school as well. He comes from Canada, so he's not from the South. He's not from SEC country. But he knows all about Rocky Top and Tennessee football, and they're very much in this race.
Another 27 class in-state commit, but not for Tennessee. Oregon. Tennessee's still in this one. Recruitment's not over, but Keyshawn Bowman went ahead and pulled the trigger early for Oregon. 6'1", 180 from Brentwood Academy. We did a rivalry Thursday game last week with him and George McIntyre against Tyreek King. That was a whole lot of fun. And I remember leaving that stadium, and I'm just like, man, why has Tennessee not gotten this guy in the boat already? I know it's early, but this guy's real talent. Tennessee's not going away in this one, right?
They are not. I think if anything, again, going back, they're being consistent and say, look, man, you're a top guy for us. You have a place here. We know you're committed to Oregon. But look, you're not signing for another year plus. So a long way to go. And I think all of us from a national perspective were a little bit, caught off guard when he committed to Oregon when he did, as early as he did, knowing at that time, at least for me, I felt Tennessee was in the best position at the time that he committed. And they're still not going away, still keeping that communication consistent. He'll be in Knoxville this weekend for Georgia. Wouldn't be surprised if he's back in Knoxville for another game later on this fall. And I feel like Tennessee is Oregon's biggest competition. He was at Ohio State. They're in the mix. He's going to Texas in November as well. They're in there. But I think if you're worried about anybody, I think it starts with Tennessee.
Star-studded affair this weekend coming on campus for Tennessee and Georgia. Obviously, there were a couple guys on campus, for the home opener. This past weekend against ETSU, but the main event's coming up here in a couple of days. We mentioned Bowman, we mentioned a couple other guys, but Donovan Moore, Lawrence Britt, Princeton, UFO, some of the other that are kind of headlining the weekend. Anything stand out about those three or anybody else that's set to be on campus this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I think Tennessee is in a great spot with UFO. I think they got on him early. They've gotten him on campus multiple times, started to build that relationship with the 2027 O-tackle in their home state. I think a guy kind of opposite with Donovan Moore, being from Alabama, an elite player on that 5-star track right now from Alabama. I think Auburn probably is the early favorite, the early school trending. So getting him back on campus, obviously Rodney Garner knows that state extremely well, playing at Auburn, coaching in the SEC footprint throughout his career. and they've had some success in that state. So getting him back on campus will be a good opportunity for Tennessee to kind of make that move and somewhat maybe close that gap with them in Auburn. But I think overall, it's going to be a monster weekend in Knoxville. There will be top recruits we know about coming now, maybe some surprises coming on later in the week as well. A great opportunity for Tennessee to put on a great show against Georgia this weekend.
Chad Simmons, one of the best in the business that covers recruiting at a national level. Rivals powering the recruiting coverage of On3. You do great work, man. What for the viewers that are watching, listening to the show right now, where can we follow your work? What do you have coming up throughout the week? Some staples, or how can we get involved more in Tennessee football recruiting, and of course on a national perspective as well?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll say we have a great team, over here at Rivals, first of all, whether it be Steve Wilfong, Adam Gorney, Sam Spiegelman, Greg Smith, myself. I mean, look, we're grinding every day trying to cover from coast to coast the best players in the country. And look, Tennessee's involved with a lot of those guys. So you want to lock in, if you're a Tennessee fan, to rivals.com. For myself, I'm always, somewhere in the South, up the East Coast, covering the best players in the country, which Tennessee loves to get involved in. The DMV, the Carolinas, they're very strong. Of course, the Peach State where I live at as well. So look, thanks for the support, Eric. We love what Tennessee is about from the community. VolQuest, they by far lead the market, the best in the business in our industry. So Rivals being part of that community is big for us as well, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Mazda Craft Cars, for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August of 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same attention to how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, with the all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. And big shout out to FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season, it is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in the live action as it unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching your team or just keeping an eye on your fantasy lineup. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more energy to your Sunday. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com, and place your first $5 bet. FanDuel, it is where you can make every moment more. Like we do every single Thursday, we're going to throw it back with Neyland Press Court, Noah Taylor, and really interesting piece you put out earlier this week. Again, Tennessee and Georgia coming up this evening, not this afternoon, not this evening. It's Saturday. Been a long week. That's coming up this Saturday. Looking forward to that. But you go back to 1968, Tennessee and Georgia opened the season. A lot of unique storylines in there. I'm going to kind of break it down in three pieces for you, and I encourage you guys to go and check out Noah's work over there on his Substack. The link is in the show notes. Let's start with the biggest story, and that's Lester McClain. Lester McClain became the first African-American player Tennessee ever put on the football field, 1968 in this game. Correct me if I'm wrong, Noah, only one other team in the SEC had an African-American player on their team at that time, so Tennessee was almost the first. But yeah, that was obviously a huge moment, and he had a pretty big role in this game.
Yeah, it's a pretty phenomenal story that he has, and had a chance to talk with him last week about it for this story specifically. And we were on the phone for probably 45 minutes, and I could have talked to the guy all afternoon. It was great. But yeah, no, basically Tennessee wanted Albert Davis, who was a star fullback at Alcoa High School. A lot of teams wanted Albert Davis to play for them. He ultimately picked Tennessee and signed with Tennessee. Lester McClain kind of came into the picture because of a guy named Bill Garrett, who was a pharmacist in Nashville and a UT alum and a really good friend with Doug Dickey. And, his senior, Lester McClain played his senior year at Antioch High School. which was his local school. He had to go 30 minutes one way to go to the all black school in rural Davidson County at the time. But by his senior year, the schools had integrated and he was allowed to go to Antioch High School. And that's where he met Bill Garrett, who oversaw the early morning conditioning of fall camp for the football program there. And he really just, for some reason, really took a liking to Lester McClain and wanted to get him to UT. So there's a story in there about a UT assistant coach told Lester McClain after one of his basketball games in high school that we're not interested in you coming to Tennessee. He said it broke his heart. He went to Bill Garrett and said, I don't think it's going to work out. He told him, keep trying. Something good will come your way. And when Tennessee signed Albert Davis, the coaching staff said, we're going to need a black teammate for him to room with. That's when Lester McClain comes back into the picture. He goes to Tennessee's spring game in 1967 and gets the offer to come to Tennessee. And then Albert Davis doesn't even make it to campus. They had a whole kind of dispute over his ACT scores, and Tennessee ended up pulling his offer, and Lester McClain becomes the first black player at Tennessee instead. And he didn't know what his role is going to be. He did tell me, he's like, it was such a big opportunity that I wasn't not going to take it just because, Albert Davis wasn't there. And so, 67, because of rules then, he doesn't get to play. He's on the freshman team, but doesn't get to play varsity. 68, that Georgia game, Tennessee season opener, he gets a chance to get up there on the field. And I thought was really cool. My favorite quote that he gave me was he got on the field in the second quarter, and he noticed the crowd was cheering him, like there was applause, an ovation for him. And he said, I felt like I was home and I was a wanted child. So I thought that was a great quote. And like you said, he ended up having a massive impact in this game. Tennessee gets down. They're down 17-9. Their final drive. They got to go 80 yards just to score and pull within 2. And then they got to go for 2 to tie it. So there's no chance they're going to win it. A lot of things had to go right for them to have a chance. And they face 4th down around midfield, and Lester McClain pulls in a pass, picks up 14 yards on 4th and 3, extends that drive. Tennessee goes down and scores. Gary Chris catches a touchdown. Then they go for 2, and Ken DeLong catches it. And Tennessee gets out of there in a tie, but certainly felt like a win, all things considered. But yeah, his first game, a historic moment for him, and he made a big impact in it.
Yeah, I mean, what a story. And, of course, his statue is sitting outside Gate 21 right now, part of the trailblazing statues for the University of Tennessee. Awesome, awesome story there. The playing surface, interesting, right? Was it kept a secret? This was the first game Tennessee had that playing surface. It was turf to begin 68 season. Georgia wasn't happy about it. What was the talk about that, and kind of did that play any role into the outcome of the game? Again, like I remember when I was, let me make this about myself as always, as a kid, and you played everything on grass, and then we would play, one of the middle school teams in Morristown, Lincoln Heights or Meadowview. I can't believe I remember those names of those little middle school football teams. They would play at, Morristown East High School, which was the playing surface they share with Morristown East and West, and it was turf, and that was a big deal, right? It was very confused. It was very, like, you had to get used to it. And then I remember going to college, and everybody had turf, and so like it was weird when you played on grass. So back then this was very, very unique, and Georgia wasn't a big fan of it.
Yeah, Bob Woodruff, Tennessee's athletic director at the time, had heard about this turf called tartan made by the 3M company in Minnesota. So Doug Dickey, who I also talked to last week for this story, he said that, Bob Woodruff came to his office one day and said, I got to tell you about this turf. It sounds like it's revolutionary. A lot of teams are going to be playing on this in a few years. We need to get ahead of the game here. And so they flew up to Minnesota and watched some Vikings defensive linemen fall on it to test it out, see what it was like. And then Bob Woodruff did it, the AD. He was a former lineman under General Neyland. So he tried it himself. Doug Dickey said it was soft enough that we could live with it, and we decided we were going to have it installed. Now, this was in, I believe, June when Tennessee made this decision. SEC spring meetings were in May, and Georgia's athletic director publicly, over and over leading up to this game, is like, why wasn't this brought up at the SEC spring meetings? They were going to come in and put this new turf that nobody's ever played on before. No SEC team has certainly never played on this before. And Bob Woodruff had to come out and say, look, I didn't know about this stuff till June, and we didn't approve it until late June. So there was a lot of headbutting there. And Vince Dooley, Georgia's head coach at the time, was also very vocal about it. He thought, well, Tennessee's going to have a month head start of practicing on it. We haven't had a chance to do that. Doug Dickey says, well, come come a week early, come a couple days early before the game, and you can practice on it. Georgia turned down the invitation. They came that Friday instead. But it was pretty funny. I found a News Sentinel article at the time. I believe it came out in July, where Bob Woodruff sent a telegram, which is crazy to think. Nowadays athletic directors, I'm sure they're all in a group chat together.
Yeah.
But he sent a telegram out to all the SEC ADs to say, look, we're installing this stuff. I think in a few years you guys are going to want it too. We're just getting it started, all that. Every SEC school that responded didn't have a problem with it. Some of them wanted to test it out or feel it or whatever, but Georgia was the only school that just was adamantly against it. So it became a huge talking deal. I put in the story, there were a couple of guys going back and forth sending poems to the newspaper about it that were pretty funny. A Georgia fan and a Tennessee fan that were just going back and forth with each other. But ultimately, the game ended up being played on it. Sports Illustrated, New York Times sent writers to the game just to write about the turf because it was such a big deal. But ultimately, they got a really good game out of it too. But one thing I thought was interesting was Lester McClain said you could play fast on it. It was the fastest turf he had ever played on, and he loved that. He said, but if you fell down, you better have pads around your knees and your elbows because you would he called them tartan burns. And he said it would rip your skin off. And if it was hot outside, it was at least 10 degrees hotter on the turf. So it had its downsides, but it seemed like the players ultimately liked the feel of it.
And the turf nowadays is so different, and it's so much, it's safer, but there's little black, depending on the turf you have, all the turf fields I ever played on, like these little black pellets, and there's these little tiny black balls, millions of them in the turf. And so if it's 92 degrees outside and the sun is beating down on that field, it's radiating up, and so it is so hot. Also, if you've never felt a turf burn and you're not used to it, it is the worst. Then you just get used to it, right? But but those are, again, it's modernized now. Like, it's not as bad. Back then, the old AstroTurf and all that. This is before the AstroTurf. It's brutal. So I thought that, and a couple things there, like they still had spring meetings. I wonder if it was in Destin. So funny. The fact that, again, we talked about this a couple months ago, like about the lights, like how all this moved fast. Like, we thought about it in June, got it approved late June, installed in July. Like, this would be a 4-year project nowadays. They got crap done back then. And the fact that Tennessee invited Georgia to come up a week early, that just cracks me up because that wouldn't happen nowadays either. So some good stuff there. Last thing, I know we're running up against it. So much great stuff in this article, guys. Go check it out. Give him a sub. He does it every single week. Substack, Neyland Press Corps, continuing to build this thing. And he does, again, interviews, firsthand accounts from Doug Dickey, from Lester McClain, going through and getting, from the Knoxville Journal, the Knoxville News Sentinel, sometimes the Tennessean, giving proper attribution as always. But really, really good stuff here every single week. Neyland Press Corps, go check it out with Noah Taylor. Last thing I want to ask you, this was the first game of John Ward's tenure as voice of the Vols. I should have let off with that, right?
Yeah, it's amazing the amount of things when you're looking over this game and deciding, well, what storyline should I go after here? Because all three of them are very big, and you can't really tell the story without telling the other stories with it. So yeah, John Ward, he had called basketball up to that point, but football was the first one, and Bill Anderson obviously is on that crew as well. And then those guys ended up calling every Tennessee football game for the next 30 years after that. So I remember being at John Ward's memorial service in 2018 after he'd passed away. And I was at the Daily Beacon then, and I went and covered it for the paper. And Doug Dickey was there, and he talked about, being a young head coach in the mid 1960s at Tennessee. He was in his early 30s. He was an assistant from Arkansas. Nobody really knew who he was. And John Ward, whose background was really in advertising, got him in with the milk, Tennessee milk suppliers or dairy farms and all that. And before Doug Dickey even coached a game, he said people knew me because I was on their milk cartons, I was on billboards. He said that was because of John Ward. He was really good at publicity. He was really good at getting my name out there. And that really helped me kind of grow with Tennessee fans before I coached a game. So I think it's fitting that he got to call that game in '68 with all that was new and all that was what was debuting that day. It's fitting that John Ward got to do it. But you can go on YouTube. I believe the Vol Network has the clip of him calling that game, and it's worth a listen to for sure. And ask Doug Dickey about his relationship with John. And he said, we did the coaches show together, which was kind of a novel concept in the 60s, a coaches show. And he said, I don't think there was a more imaginative guy than John Ward, and just talked about it, what a terrific asset he was for UT. And I think Tennessee fans, particularly older ones that can remember listening to him call games, would certainly say the same thing. But I think it's super fitting that the way that game ended in a 17-17 tie and with a 2-point conversion with no time left, you couldn't have asked for a better game for a guy like John Ward to call.
I miss old school coaches shows. I mean,
Yeah.
they're just, obviously it's a different version of that now. But it's just not the same. It's not even close. So a lot happening in this game centered around Tennessee and Georgia for this year, obviously, but a lot centered around that game back in 1968. You can learn about, we just touched the highlights, learn about it all, deep dive into it. Go check it out in the Neyland Press Corps. Noah Taylor joined his Substack, and we'll can't wait to see what you have worked up for the UAB angle next week, man.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what we do next week, because once you get in the flow of these SEC games, there's endless amounts of past games and storylines you can find. But got some stuff in the works that I think are going to be pretty fun to look back on for fans.
Well, we'll be looking forward to it, man. Thanks as always, Noah.
Appreciate it, Eric. Thank you.
Awesome stuff from Noah Taylor, Neyland Press Corps, throwing it back every Thursday right here on Locked On Vols. Be sure to check out his Substack. Check out his great work. Noah Taylor does awesome stuff, looking back at some of the better moments, players, and games in Tennessee football history. Loaded show. Appreciate Noah Taylor stopping by. Appreciate Chad Simmons dropping by. Appreciate you guys dropping by, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. If you have a Tennessee fan in your life that thinks this show is for them, tell them. Please, we need to grow this show, get it in front of more and more Tennessee fans. We can do that by downloading these episodes audio wherever you listen to your podcast, subscribing to the YouTube channel. Almost 18,000 subs. That's awesome. News of the day, entertainment of the day, and I hope you leave a little educated heading into the game day, like what we talked about Georgia in segment number 1. We'll continue this conversation. Boogie Bentley coming up on the show tomorrow. I'll give you my official game pick and so much more as we head into game day, Tennessee and Georgia. We are with you every single step of the way right here on Locked On Vols. Thank you so much for being here. Until we chat again tomorrow, enjoy the rest of your Thursday, everybody.